With AI, now marketing professionals can essentially create what's mediocrity at scale. So, in the age of AI, how do marketing pros now create great content? We're going to talk all about it in this episode of Closing Time. Welcome to Closing Time, the show for go-to-market leaders. My name is Chip House. I'm the CMO at Insightly CRM. And today I'm super excited to be joined by Ann Handley. And of course, Ann is a well-known writer. And so I'm going to read the intro that she wrote for me. So Ann Handley helps businesses stand out in the sea of same. She's the world's first chief content officer, a Wall Street Journal best-selling author of 3 books, and has co-founded 2 multi-million-dollar companies. She is a partner in Marketing Profs, an education and training company that trains teams at the world's most distinct businesses. An inductee to the Content Marketing Hall of Fame, she is also an avid collector of old school typewriters and a Tina Fey superfan. Who isn't? Get ready. Here comes Ann Handley. Thanks for joining us, Ann. That was awesome.
Gosh, Chip, I'm so hyped to be here today. So thank you. That was so nice.
So, yeah, of course. And so I had to read it because it was so well written. And who doesn't like Tina Fey? I love Tina Fey.
I don't know.
And so we're going to drill in. We're going to talk about AI and we're going to talk about email marketing. And there's, like I said in the intro, essentially, there's a lot of positives with AI now, and there are a lot of challenges that it's creating. Number one, volume and mediocre content out there. And it certainly is enticing for sales and marketing pros to optimize everything they're doing, but there's a right way and there's a wrong way to do it. So let's just kind of start there. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think you're absolutely right that it has never been easier to create mediocrity at scale. And what I mean by that is that these AI tools put capabilities in the hands of everyone. And, Chip, I wrote a book about, titled Everybody Writes. So I am all in on giving the tools to everyone to create better content, to write, to publish, to produce. But, a little bit of the challenge with AI has been that, it does give us the tools to create that mediocrity at scale. And so the question in my mind has been since day one of, well, how do we not just slide into mediocrity, and how do we use these tools to elevate our output, to elevate our presence, and to increase the connections with our audience? And that right there is the crux of the issue that I am obsessed with in 2024. It was just almost a year ago, just over a year ago, actually, November 30th, 2022. And that is burned into my brain because that is the day that ChatGPT 3.5 first came out, and was suddenly put this tool, AI writing tool, in the hands of each of us, right? So for the first time ever, even though AI had existed for a really long time, and even though generative AI had been evolving, over months and over years, for the first time ever, it was suddenly accessible to everyone. And so the question immediately became, is this going to enhance human capabilities? Or is it going to replace us as marketers? Or maybe the third option, is AI completely overhyped? And since then, I think things have calmed down a little bit. Things have settled. And I think 2024 is the year where we don't talk about the hype of AI. We don't talk about, the sort of party tricks that we've all seen it do, like that conversation that it had with a New York Times reporter where it almost had this, sort of love interest in him. Yeah, exactly. So I think we've gone past that. And I think we've gone past, for the most part, the fear of it. And I think 2024 is all about when we stop talking about those things and start figuring out some very practical applications of it. And so, that's what I'm most excited about.
No, it makes good sense. And there's all sorts of metaphors we could come up with this, like running with scissors. I mean, I don't know if you're a golfer, Ann, but it's like often changing golf clubs doesn't make you a better golfer, right? And so adding AI may not make you a better writer. Your
Right.
friend and mine, Jay Bear, joked that AI equals average information, right? And so
Right.
I think that is the challenge. And so in our pre-call, we talked a little bit about this, and you talked about as AI begins to be used more broadly and sales and marketing pros are using it, the importance for relationships really rises to the forefront. Can you talk more about what you meant by that?
Yeah, yeah. So, I mean, I actually am very excited about the advent of generative AI in email, certainly, but also just more broadly in marketing, because I think of generative AI as ushering in what I call the great writing renaissance. And you might know that if you think about the word renaissance, it has an AI right in the middle of it, right? That's the AI is embedded in renaissance. And so why I call it that is because I think that it calls us to a place where we need to publish and produce writing content material that people love, not just that they like, not just that they find useful, but they truly connect with. And so that's what I mean by relationships. I think we need to use our marketing assets, our email, our landing pages, our social posts, all of it to forward or to pull forward those relationships that we have with our audience, because in my mind the last couple of years, or maybe the last 10 years or so, ever since I published Content Rules in 2010, which in internet years, that's like, I don't know, like 2000 years ago. That's what it feels
Eons.
like in
Yeah.
some ways. Yeah, eons, totally eons. But it's always been about reaching as many people as we can, and I don't think that that's the name of the game in 2024 anymore. It's not about producing more and getting bigger audiences. Instead, it's about serving and connecting with the people that truly matter to us and our businesses. And so that's why I think that the great writing renaissance with AI embedded right in it offers us that ability to build those relationships. And I think one of the best ways to do that is through email, because in a world where we do have unlimited opportunities, I think that direct audience relationships are the name of the game. And we see that, with cookies going away later this year in 2024, would be one reason why I think we need to get those direct relationships with our customers. Social media is just kind of it's a difficult place to break through right now. But again, it's not about breaking through, it's not about reaching, but it's about using those platforms to build those direct audience relationships with our prospects and with our customers.
Yeah, that makes good sense. And it's building on the piece of us that's human. And I think, we've talked a lot about, actually had Todd Capone on Closing Time, and we talked to him about how marketers and salespeople tend to ruin everything, right? We ruined the phone, then we ruined email, then we ruined, telemarketing. And so, we can't have nice things. And so let's not ruin AI, and let's approach it in the right way. And so kind of building on that, you have relationships. And we also talked about the
Yeah.
idea of building stronger connections, and
Mhm.
in the age of AI. What did you mean by that?
Yeah, can I just comment on Todd's comment though before we talk
Yeah,
about that? I mean, part of that is
for
true.
sure.
We do ruin things, but I don't think it's like, I don't like that all marketers are painted by that, because people like you and I and a lot of the people who we know, like, we do really show up in truly authentic ways. We want to build those relationships. And so I don't know, I get a little bit defensive when people start talking about how marketers ruin everything, because I don't think that's the case. I think there are a few bad apples who, once email came out, they created spam, and
Yeah,
and
exactly.
and so it's not all of us, and that's what my work in my entire career has been about, is to call marketers to a higher place, because I don't believe that anybody in marketing today, and anybody who has ever been in marketing who I truly like and respect and would want to work with, would wake up, as a child, or would grow up as a child and be like, I can't wait to spam the heck out of my community. I can't wait to grow a list and just hammer the heck out of it. Like, no one wants that. And so I really do believe that marketers fundamentally want to do right. Sometimes they are held to standards that are unreasonable within organizations. But that's a whole other conversation. So anyway.
No, I'm glad you brought it up because it's sort of like the same level of restraint, Anne, that we all had in the early 2000s to not spam the crap out of everybody that we have to have in mind here relative to
Yes.
AI.
Yes, exactly. We are in control. We have a choice to make. And that's why I'm suggesting that we do need to embrace this great writing renaissance. But anyway, sorry to derail your questioning there, but I just
No, I'm glad you commented about it. Yeah, it's
Yep.
derail away, you know.
Oh my gosh.
So we can pick on Todd after this.
Nothing but love for Todd. I know what he means, and I
Yeah.
know where that sentiment comes from, and there is some truth in it, but I don't think it applies across the board. What do I mean by? Oh my gosh, I totally forgot what you just asked. Relationships.
I said, yeah. You talked about relationships, and I think it's sort of closely related. Is like forming tighter connections.
Oh, connections, right? That's what it was. Sorry. I think that we spend a lot of time in marketing thinking about how we look, from a brand point of view. And I think that one of the things that generative AI offers us is the ability to do what we've always wanted to do, but have never quite had the time or the luxury, maybe, is to think about our brand voice, our recognizable brand voice. Because even though generative AI is often marketed as a kind of writing tool, I actually, and I'm using like air quotes there, I actually think of it as more of an efficiency tool. It's like, yes, broadly, it can help you create and write. But more specifically, I don't think it's really about the writing. I think it's more about giving you some, efficiency in other areas. And we can talk more about that in a second if you want. But I think the idea of giving us back some time that we have spent doing things that we can use AI as a kind of wing person or wingman to help us with, and giving and using that time to think more strategically about how we're showing up, using our brand voice, thinking through the way that we are communicating with our audience. And so that's where I get excited when I start thinking about that kind of stuff, because every time I've talked about brand voice over the past few years, people have said, yeah, we have that. It's in a binder in a conference room somewhere, or it's like in a file on the CMO's hard drive, and it just has never quite evolved, or for most brands, for a lot of brands, especially in the B2B space. And so my hope, and what I've been trying to educate marketers around, is that this is the time. Like, think about if relationships are important, if connections are important, if we need to build those direct relationships, if we need to build trust with our audience, then let's think about the best vehicle to do that. And very often, to me, it comes down to how we're communicating, not just what we're saying, but how we're saying it. Brand voice.
Yeah, it makes great sense, Anne. And you're right. I mean, I see it as an efficiency tool as well. And I've used it very successfully that way. It's like, I was going to write something like that anyway. And so now I wrote it faster, and now I can just make it better and leverage my own knowledge to do so. It's also great at outlining, I've kind of found. It's sort of, just because it has, the ability to search tons of information, it can quickly come up with, here's what should be in whatever you're writing, right? I think that's kind of helpful.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think of AI in sort of four distinct areas. The first is a kind of utility player, which is kind of what you're talking about there, which is just to do some sort of perfunctory, rudimentary kind of things for us as writers, or as content creators, or as marketers. The second way is as a sort of, and I alluded to this earlier, but like a wingman or a wing person, to give the non-gendered name, where we can actually start to elevate what we're doing a little bit. The third way is a way that I use it, and I call it the fairy godmother, only because I like that fairy also has the AI embedded in it, and I sort of I can't get away from wordplay. So, and a fairy godmother,
wordplay.
Yeah, a fairy godmother for me is quite often like sometimes I'll use AI as almost like a reality check. Like, what's missing from this? Because I have a certain point of view, and very often I have that sort of curse of knowledge, right? So if I can tell AI, this is the persona that I'm trying to speak to, this is the individual who I need to picture in my mind's eye, give me a reality check on this. What am I missing here? And so that's the kind of feedback that is very important to me as a writer, because it gets me out of my own head. And rather than waiting for audience feedback, it sort of allows me to, accelerate that a little bit and produce content that's even stronger. So that's a third way, and probably one of my favorite ways to use it. And the fourth way is absolutely no use, because
Yeah,
sometimes
it's an option.
you don't need it.
Yeah.
For me, writing is thinking. I need that first draft process to understand what my point of view is and what I'm thinking. Now, I recognize that not everybody is like this. My own daughter works in content marketing. She's in her very first job out of college, and she loves it for first drafts because she's not that kind of creator. And so I think it depends on kind of what your perspective is, but I no use is a perfectly legitimate use of AI as well.
Yeah, no, I love that framework, Anne. And I'm that kind of person too. I feel like I need to write sometimes just to know what I think,
Yeah.
and once it's down on paper, then I like, okay, now I have a framework, and now I could maybe take it to AI to help me flesh it out
Yeah,
potentially.
yeah,
So
exactly.
you talked about brand and the connections to your brand with this. And when I think about running our team at scale, right, we produce a ton of content, and how do we all stick true to our brand and our brand voice? And frankly, it's a challenge. And so, kind of in our pre-call, we just talked about the rise of the importance of brand,
Hmm.
and for marketers, a lot of things we're thinking about is SEO and branded search versus non-branded search and things like that. You had an opinion on this. Is it going to be much more difficult for us to compete now that AI has taken the lead for many people?
Yeah, I think so. At least from an unbranded search perspective, and what I mean by that is, I do think that, over the past, well, since the beginning of the modern internet, since the start of SEO, that we have been, thinking about using search engines as a way to drive traffic to us based on keywords and keyword optimization and all that kind of stuff. I think it's either going to significantly diminish or possibly go away entirely. I'm not exactly sure because I don't have a crystal ball. And again, I'm not a search person, but in my mind, like when I look at the evolution of tools and the way that we are using generative AI, um, it makes sense to me that we will see less unbranded search. So, for example, you may see fewer people who are searching for your category. And so, what does that mean? It means that you've got to think about, how do you elevate your brand? How do you be part of that consideration set early on instead of just trying to be there when they're searching for you? And so I think that, we've done both in marketing over the past few years, but I think in 2024, brand is everything. I think we need to be building our brands, our brand voice. We talked about that a second ago, because I do think that it's going to be increasingly important to be in the brain of your buyers much sooner than maybe we have thought of it in the past.
Yeah, no, I love that. I think brand is back. I don't know if it ever went fully away, but it definitely is back. And if you're a marketer and you're only talking to the 5% that are in market, you're doing it wrong, right?
Mm-hmm.
So there's a bunch of people that are potential customers in the future that you have to influence.
Yeah.
And maybe that's the way you see it, Anne.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, brand has always been really hard to quantify, and I think that's a challenge for us as marketers, is to make those connections. And it's not easy, but I do think that we as a group and as a community do need to focus on it in 2024. For all the reasons that we talked about too, about relationships, about brand voice, about building trust and affinity with your audience. Like all of those things I think are rolling up. And certainly AI has been an accelerator for all those things, but I do feel like marketing has been moving in this direction for a while.
Yeah, it makes a ton of sense. And Anne, thanks so much. That's all the time we have today.
Oh gosh,
it was
all right.
great having you.
Yeah, for sure. Thank
Yeah,
you.
it went really, really fast. Went fast. And we'd love to have you back sometime. And to all of you out there, thank you so much for watching. We hope you found it valuable, and we'd love it if you could subscribe to the channel, and we'll see you next time.